Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Director Watch, an AwardsWatch podcast that attempts to get inside the mind of cinema's greatest auteurs, explore what drives them, and maybe we'll go on a few unrelated tangents along the way. I'm Ryan McQuade, the executive editor here at AwardsWatch. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Ledbetter.
And we're talking Enemy today. Denis Villeneuve's, I don't know, what do you call this? His last small movie? Is it safe to call it that?
Well, it's safe to call it because that's the case. Like it's the last one to squeak out before he goes big.
Hollywood.
Before he sells out. Sellout wouldn't be a way to say it, but
I do not think Denis Villeneuve is a sellout by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but he's definitely never going to go back to making something
before
like
he
this
gets
again.
Fully ingrained into the studio system.
Before he's like,
say that
I just want to make sci-fi movies.
And Sicario.
Maybe Sicario's the last one.
That's a pretty big movie, though.
It's big in scope.
Yeah.
But how much is we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
I guess
costs a lot more than this movie did, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, this movie was what? This was a shoestring, right?
Yeah, I couldn't actually find a confirmed budget for it. Which
I only found box office. I only made like 3.5
box office
million.
was 3.5, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't want to tell you how much it was. How much did Jake take off the top?
Good question. I'm just going to give an estimate of 10, 15.
I'm going to say 12 and a half. Cut you in the middle.
Split the difference?
I think so.
I can get down with that.
I think so. I think that sounds
a very small cast.
Very small movie, only 90 minutes. Shouldn't be that much. I mean, your two lead actors, you're only having to pay one salary.
Mm-hmm.
It's like kind of perfect for Hollywood.
You don't think Rossellini's banking 15 mil a feature?
She's got like an A24 connection kind of thing where she has to be a small character in A24 movies, doesn't she?
Okay, so there's Marcel the Shell. What else am I forgetting?
She's the narrator in the upcoming film Problemista. She's like all over that indie scene.
All right, so she's been in 3 out of A24's 100 movies. So yeah, she's pretty much a staple.
Yeah, once you hit 3, I think you're there.
She's ingrained.
Yeah, I mean, like if Ari Aster makes 3 films and you think that he's ingrained, I mean, right? Is that how math works? I think so. We're really starting off strong here. What we're saying is today we're talking about Enemy. Yeah. Coming off of the heels of last week's conversation, talking about Prisoners.
Back-to-back Gyllenhaal, baby.
Back-to-back Gyllenhaal. And since it's back-to-back Gyllenhaal, there's 2 Gyllenhaals in this movie, both played by Jake.
There are.
Movie starts Jake Gyllenhaal and Mélanie Laurent and Sarah Godin. And then it starts Jake Gyllenhaal again. And then, of course, Isabel Rossellini. Of course, it's directed by Denis Villeneuve. The movie is about a man who seeks out his exact lookalike after spotting him in a movie. Jay, I feel like we're not going to be here that long today because it's only like a 90-minute movie, but I feel like there's a lot to talk about.
There is.
With Enemy.
I like this movie a lot.
I like this movie too. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what you think about this movie because we've never talked about this. We've talked about in the next couple of weeks. We've talked, you and I, off camera a couple of times off mic about those movies before. We've even talked about in the given year a movie like Dune. We never really talked about Enemy. I don't feel like a lot of people talk about it either way because, like you were mentioning last week, Prisoners is so all consuming of the dialogue of Denis Villeneuve from this year. This movie gets like slowly released in 2014, even though it premiered at TIFF in 2013.
2013.
2013.
12.
Nope. Okay. I'm looking at it right now. 2013 TIFF, and then Canada, Spain, France, and America in March, and then August of 2014. So technically it's the 2014, but
Okay, so I had it wrong. I knew it was like the year after.
Yeah, it's like a couple of months after Prisoners.
Yeah,
it's not that far off. But anyway, what do you think of this bad boy?
This movie, I've got a bit of a history with this one.
Story time.
a little bit of story time. Not a particularly crazy story or anything, but this was a pretty important movie for me, surprisingly. This
Really?
movie, yeah, this was a movie that me and my college roommate really bonded over. So my college roommate for my last 2 years of college, that's actually where my film criticism started this movie review site with my college roommate, Raining Frogs Reviews. That you can get that web domain now because it doesn't exist anymore, but it
Okay.
that's kind of where this whole little journey for me started. And this was one of the movies that we really were drawn to at that time as far as new releases were concerned. And it was one of those things where we Prisoners was good. We liked it. We were like, this guy is, a compelling filmmaker. There's a lot to like here. That movie I don't like as much now as I did then, and I didn't even love it then. But then this came out, and I think as you're starting to dive a little bit more into film criticism and looking at film in a new way, this coming from the same guy who made Prisoners is really compelling.
Yeah.
And the movie kind of describes itself with the title card pretty early in the movie when it says chaos is order yet undeciphered. And when you look at that, you're like, oh, look at that very interesting little quote there. It's
Hmm.
not the deepest quote in the world, but I think it is a mission statement for this movie, which is to say, this is Denis Villeneuve working at a more abstract level where you are going to be confused by this film. But what is so compelling about the movie is that you have to kind of figure it out. Whereas Prisoners is such a puzzle box movie where the pieces are put together in front of you. This is the film whose thematic and emotional ideas sort of flower inside of your own mind. It can mean different things to different people. Prisoners is a pretty straightforward movie. That's why I described it as not especially sticky. This movie, I think, is super sticky, and a lot of that has to do with the final shot of this movie, which is incredible. And we'll talk about that symbolism.
Yeah.
As I'm getting a little bit older, I do think the symbolism is, I think it's very clear what the spider imagery in this movie represents. Um, but it's compelling nonetheless, just simply from an aesthetic perspective. And what I find interesting about this one is it is a film that features men exclusively for probably 80% of the movie, but it is a film about how men sort of exploit women and
Mm.
through whatever systems in the world are in place have license to do so. And that really coalesces in kind of the grand finale of the movie, where really it's this guy who is so riddled with anxiety and um self-doubt, and it's really the woman who finally takes ownership of her own life in that moment. And you can kind of where this movie ends up, you can think about it literally or you can think about it metaphorically and come to very, very different conclusions, which I find very interesting. But it, it's a it is a literally male centric film that I think thematically is actually pretty female focused,
Mm.
which I think is a really interesting approach. It's a really good movie. I like this movie like a lot, a lot, a lot.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, Jay, we've kind of talked about how, I mean, we talked about it with Eric last week about the kind of correlation with Denis Villeneuve and Nolan, right? They're kind of, you see Denis Villeneuve and you see a guy like Christopher Nolan, you can't think, oh, well, that's the kind of model that they want to
Are you
put
gonna
Denis
are you gonna
Villeneuve.
claim this as his memento?
I think so. it's got Memento. It's got shades of, this, I think it's got these shades of David Lynch in there as well.
It's so much less commercial than Memento.
It's got mixtures of Pakula. I thought at times when I was
A
watching
little bit.
This,
It
this
looks
paranoid.
like the Mexico parts of Traffic.
I was just gonna say it looks yellow as hell. And it's sponsored by French mustard. A little Grey Poupon, a little bit, right?
Yeah, aesthetically, I find it kind of great. And then there are some shots where they kind of abandon that color scheme, and it's really jarring and
Yeah,
interesting.
Even Kubrickian with that opening.
Well, this is kind of the thing about Villeneuve is he's a little bit a pastiche of the greatest filmmakers of all time.
Yep.
And you do sort of dock him a little bit for that in the same way that you watch we on our former podcast, Ryan, we did a Robert Altman series, and there were a lot of discoveries for Robert Altman. And I remember one of my thoughts from that series being, oh, this is what Paul Thomas Anderson was doing for like 15 years.
Yeah. For like the first half of his career, he's like,
yeah,
I just want to be Robert Altman,
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't help.
Then,
It does help that like he's like his mentor and he's helping him make Prairie Home Companion.
Yeah. I mean, that's a literal kind of
that's a little
hand.
Through. It's almost like a baton, handoff.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you're gonna be like, I'm gonna try and make movies like Stanley Kubrick and David Fincher and Christopher Nolan, more power to you. And he's good at it.
No, I think no, and that's the thing is we talked about it last week with Prisoners. That movie has like the makings and models of what make David Fincher movies so great, like Seven and Zodiac, and
that one not even Gone Girl.
No, not a great imitation. Has the skeleton for sure, but doesn't have the heartbeat, the soul, right? That makes those Fincher movies like
just a pot boiler, but it doesn't have the sense of humanity.
It doesn't have really, honestly, doesn't have a madman behind the camera to just
no. Villeneuve seems like a chill bro.
Yeah, he's very chill. As Fincher, it's like, calm down, bro. You know what I mean?
He takes after Kubrick.
Exactly. But I think that this movie is the best of what Denis Villeneuve could be when he is leaning on his inspirations. Like I mentioned Kubrick, I mentioned Lynch. I do think Memento fits here, a puzzle, because this movie is a bit of a puzzle box. I think I honestly was watching it and I was thinking of a guy that I love. I know you love him too. Very underrated when I mentioned Pakula, because it's just got that paranoid thriller attachment to it that honestly,
because he's just such a literal filmmaker.
Not that. No, it's not. Yeah, it's not that at all. But you're saying Pakula is a very literal filmmaker? I'm saying
Pakula is. This is a very expressionistic movie.
Yeah, but I think that you carry those over. You know what I mean? And I didn't read anything at all if those movies, when I was looking at it, I didn't see any of those movies from Pakula, like Parallax View or Clute or All the President's Men mentioned. But you can very much feel that any movie that's a paranoid thriller post 1970s is clearly has the shades of that man and his work throughout the entirety of cinema. That's his gift, I think, going forward. But I think it's fascinating that this movie came out the same year as a movie called The Double. Did you ever see The Double?
I have not seen The Double, but I had honestly forgotten that until the end credits came up for this one, that this was based on The Double.
Yeah, which
was, a movie.
Yeah. And
Jesse Eisenberg, right?
Yeah, and that movie is not as good, I would say.
Richard Ayoade directed that?
I believe so. I like this much more because I think that it does almost what you mentioned earlier with PTA, right? PTA does There Will Be Blood, but he takes oil and completely makes it his own thing, right? He takes this text and sort of, and I mean, obviously I'm not comparing this to something like There Will Be Blood, but what I'm saying is that the idea of taking adaptation and not just doing a literal, cradle to grave adaptation from the page, find yourself within the text to create something different and unique and bold. And I think Villeneuve does that here. And I think that, I mean, honestly, probably the best male male performer, I'm sorry, to work with him is Gyllenhaal. I think Gyllenhaal gives a great performance in Prisoners.
The best male performer to work with Villeneuve.
Mm-hmm. He's had 2 cracks at it.
I think I prefer Gosling, but
that's fair. Fine. But I think overall I just prefer that movie. But
in general, I think Gosling is a pretty special performer.
Yes. You and I agree.
Slowly come around to that opinion as well.
I think, well, I mean, I've never.
Now he's doing, I don't know what he's doing next. He's doing like Hitman movies and The Gray Man.
But then he's doing Barbie.
And then he's great in Barbie. So
here's the thing.
I don't know.
I've always had my Ryan Gosling stock. So it's nice that everybody this year is just starting to buy it up on stock. Yeah. That's at a very high value for his Oscar campaign for Barbie. And I'm like kind of sitting here going, I remember this guy. Remember the Titans. Remember this guy. I saw Stay opening weekend. Did you all see Stay with him and Ewan McGregor? I don't think so.
What is Gyllenhaal's best comedic performance?
Is it the John Mulaney thing with the?
Is it Okja?
Is it Okja? Does the John Mulaney special count?
Velvet Buzzsaw. I guess the John Mulaney thing counts,
right?
Sack lunch bunch or whatever it's called.
Bubble Boy.
Oh, Bubble Boy, man. I forget that he has been around for so long.
He has been around for years. Gyllenhaal has been around. I mean, we talked about like the back half of his filmography. We did not talk about like the beginning of his filmography, like, when he was supposed to be
in City Slickers.
Yeah. He's in like City Slickers. He becomes like a heartthrob. He's in like The Day After Tomorrow. They wanted him to be Spider-Man. He doesn't do that. He had like Donnie Darko.
October Sky. That was October a huge Sky movie for me growing up.
How many times did they play that in science class on a rainy day?
Exactly.
Right?
That was a go-to.
Good movie. Laura Dern, Chris Cooper.
It is good.
Good
Chris
movie.
Cooper's so good in that.
So good. Laura Dern too. Both of them. Mm-hmm. Incredible. And you know what they did? A couple years later, they reteamed and they were in Little Women. And they were great then too.
Yep.
Chris Cooper, man. Chris Cooper, what an actor. Chris Cooper.
Great actor.
One of the greats.
He's got his trophy.
Yeah. He should have a couple more probably. Feels like he should have like a ton. He's great. But anyway, back to Enemy. I think this movie's fascinating. I think you're right. I think that it's the whole spider stuff. If you want to get into that, I think that's the kind of the good jumping off point, because
let's just start with it.
I think that it's the right thing to start off with. I'm curious to hear what you think. I mean, it's sort of been kind of interpreted as like many different things over time.
Yeah. I want you to go first.
Oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just like it felt like for me watching it this time that early on the spider is seen in that sort of sex dream.
The club.
Sequence. Yeah, the club sequence, right? And it's the spider is there, I think, in a lot of ways to represent marriage. And the idea of
interesting.
The idea of that the minute all these temptations around you start to unfold, and you see it through Gyllenhaal's eyes. This whole movie is a metaphor on marriage. And the idea of
interesting. I think it's less specific than that, but I can buy that.
I mean, for me, it is. I mean, it literally is about that. But then also thinking about the idea of you get into marriage. We first see Gyllenhaal. He's sort of like going through a mundane routine, got to break out of it, right? This movie is essentially, even though it's a body swap film, it's about getting out of the conformity of life, a new marriage, a routine, try to break it apart. But every time you try to do like a twist or a dark alley turn, even like in the beginning of this movie, which is very Eyes Wide Shut, right? And that whole movie is about marriage and 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 sex.
You know what it made me
and
think of was The Handmaiden,
yeah, The Handmaid,
which obviously came out afterwards, but
yeah, but just it's all about taboos, right? And the
yeah, it's
spider
about
to me,
being your worst self in private around people who are also being their worst selves.
yeah, and keeping it all together before it implodes. So I think by the end, when he's like deflated at seeing this even giant spider more than just a small one, I think that it's like, oh, the problem didn't get any better through all these different tricks and turns and all this different stuff. It just ends up being a full circle, and it's even bigger of a problem now because you're stuck here. He's stuck now in this life. So you got to make it work, whether or not you want to be in it anymore. You can't run away from your relationship. And I think that the female characters in this film, while they're like you're saying, Jay, it's like 80 to 85% with the two versions of Gyllenhaal in it. It's very much about the idea of like, how are you going to be with your partner? Are you going to try to avoid this? Are you going to try to attempt to be that other version of yourself?
It's always simmering.
Exactly. And I think
I think it's a really is part of what makes the movie great.
Yeah, I think that's what's a really interesting way of kind of looking at this movie, rather than it just being about like, oh well, because the literal way is like, oh well, he switched positions with his twin, and oh yeah, it ended up poorly, and then there's some weird spiders at the end and play the credits. You know what I mean? So I think of it as a metaphor on relationships.
That would be pretty weird if you watched this movie, saw that last shot, and were like,
yeah. If you walked out like just like unfazed by it,
even if you were like, what a pretentious piece of garbage ending, valid, fine, whatever. But if you were just like, spider, huh? Whatever.
I say one spider, you've seen them all. You know what I mean? And also, it's a metaphor for a web of lies. That's what this whole thing is about.
Web of lies, Big Little Lies.
Yeah, Big Little Lies. Oh God, yes, Big Little Lies.
So for me, as far as the spider is concerned, I think it relates mostly to kind of the permanent emotional tattoo of his relationship with his mother.
That too, yeah.
Because I think the moment when there's this kind of motif, this perpetuating image of the skyline, this hazy skyline, and at one point a giant spider looming over the skyline. That's immediately after a scene with his mother. At the very end of the film, what happens right before we see the giant spider? Oh, your mother called. So immediately when you have the Adam character who finds the key to this sex club again, and he's kind of like, okay, I got to go out tonight. This is what it's going to do. Immediately, it's like this reminder of what, in his mind, fairly or unfairly, I think it's actually a good decision of the movie to leave the relationship between him and his mother pretty ambiguous. It's just like him thinking to himself, or the world reminding him of how his relationship with his mother has scarred him to one degree or another. I mean, the one thing you do see with his mother, played by Isabella Rossellini, is her saying, I wish you would stop, going for this dream job as an actor, which in the moment, the main thing you're thinking is, oh, which version of Gyllenhaal does she think she's talking to? But when you kind of unpack it a little bit, it's more about that self-doubt that his mother has kind of hoisted upon him, and how that self-doubt has found itself ingrained in his relationships with women, and how he's kind of allowed to operate with this distrust of any woman, and his disinterest in allowing himself to give himself over to another person. I find it fascinating that the Anthony character, what is the first thing he wants to do when he finds out that there is an identical, essentially a double of him? He wants to cheat on his pregnant wife.
Yeah.
And that is so telling of kind of where this film stands as far as the morals of the Anthony character specifically, and then later when the Anthony version of this man ceases to exist, you kind of see the two, Adam and Anthony, start to blend together, and you see that really these were two parts of a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And this amalgamation, you have the intense insecurity of Adam with the intense sense of entitlement of Anthony, which both result in a distancing from their partner. And so when you kind of relate that back to the spider imagery, it's so interesting to see, the spider is a symbol in this film of both intense sexuality and also horror,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, that's the movie really is
Yeah.
about how women are so alluring and also so terrifying. And those two things draw them to other women and also push them away from women that they are with. And it's there's a lot to unpack with this movie, and I think just aesthetically it's a stunner. Really do.
Yeah, I think that the movie is, like you're saying, I think aesthetically it's incredible. And you're mentioning, when you mentioned last week when we were talking about Prisoners, that Villeneuve has this way of controlling uh, the film with the sense of pace or the sense of tone. He's a real master of tone, right?
He is.
And I think this movie is dialed up to this tense point the entire time, not to the point of Prisoners or on Sandis where there's moments where that tenseness turns into dread. I think the tenseness here turns into so much curiosity that it whizzes
Yeah.
by in 90 minutes. Like to me, this was such a quick watch.
Well, it's
Then
also,
like
I mean, it's a short movie,
it's a
but
90-minute
it's
watch, but
especially
you
after
know what I
Prisoner.
mean.
The Prisoners is a full
That's a mountain to
hour
climb
plus
over. Yeah,
longer than this movie.
hour and a half longer than this movie.
It's an hour. It's an hour and change.
Well, that movie's what, 2.5 hours?
2.5. This is an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Oh yeah, that's 90 minutes. Duh. What am I talking about? But I agree with you, Jay. I think we're both kind of hitting. I think we're both being Adam and Anthony right now, and I think that you kind of converge it about, because where does all marital problems, especially for guys,
We are
usually
the Adam and
probably
Anthony
start?
podcast.
Where do where do they usually start? It starts with the childhood, and a lot of it usually starts with the parents. In this case,
Yeah.
since we didn't see a dad, it starts with the mother, right? So why is he afraid to ask her? Or when Adam has that scene with her, and it almost feels like she's holding things back from him, and with the way we see her through him at that point, it's not confrontational, but it's still distanced. You know
Uneasy.
what I mean? Yeah, uneasy. And I don't think about nearly the giant spider at the end as much as the sigh. That's where I think that the sigh is like,
his sigh. Yeah, well, it's what I love so much about that too is the spider kind of coils up. It's not like it's about to pounce.
no,
It's kind of scared.
it's kind of getting comfortable, right?
And then Gyllenhaal just finds it kind of tedious and
See,
annoying.
tedious, but also just like inevitable.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a great word.
Yeah. It's just, oh, I went through all that and it's still gonna be this.
And it's just saying after this, it's such a darkly happy ending. And I know I brought up Old Boy when we were talking about On Sundays,
That's
because
a
I think
very
that
good
movie is the problem with On Sundays is that it plays itself way too straight and then has that Old Boy twisted ending.
Yeah,
This movie is not. This is a much more self-aware movie, and in a similar way that at the end of Old Boy, he has his memory wiped and is just okay with being in love with his daughter because he doesn't know it's his daughter anymore. Spoilers for Old Boy. which is now in theaters, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. It's just now in theaters. We're going to spoil it 2 weeks after its release or whatever.
But I mean, this has kind of a similar darkly ironic happy ending, where the partners from the beginning of the film of the two characters end up together at the end of the film, die, or so it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's supposed to be their happy ending, but then you have this completely deflating grand finale where it's like, no, this is just a cycle. This is just a cycle.
Well,
there is not just Adam and Anthony. Adam and Anthony are always present.
Yeah.
And that push and pull is going to be there forever.
But it also, like marriage, it's not two people walk away in the sunset or two people die in a car wreck. It's in the middle. It's one side extremely comfortable and the other side looking at it, sighing instead of facing the problems and going, tomorrow's another day, like it was before then and the day before that. Like it's a funny, I think it's a funny way to end this movie, to be honest. I had a good chuckle with it. But it also was just like, yeah, I was like, yeah, they went through all that and ultimately where does it lead? And sometimes it's okay for a movie to just kind of end its result on being, these characters went through a little bit of like this wild couple of months and try to change things up, because it's like, right, when you get in a relationship for such a long time, right, Jay, you end up like trying to spice things up, whether it's, just different date nights or, different activities, hell, even in the bedroom, people change things up all the time, try to spice things up. Ultimately, you get back to your comfortable ways and it's okay. I think sometimes just being,
this is interesting that you see this as,
I think this movie is like
metaphor for a,
I think it's a inevitability,
maybe not a healthy marriage, but a typical marriage.
Yeah.
I don't see that.
I don't think it's toxic, but I don't think it's like,
I think he's a toxic figure.
I think he's toxic. And I think the actions in the film represent that, those toxic deep down inside things that we're talking about. But ultimately by the end, to circle it back, I mean, like this movie ends with, one man sort of swap, like it ends with a swap, right? And you're kind of sitting there and you're like, okay, what did you go through? Was it worth it? Was all those dreams that you thought about of like the better life that you could have had? No, it was just like, you're going to end up right back at the same road you're at, dude.
Okay, so now we're talking about structurally how you view the movie. So you see it as sort of a dream hallucination that then collapses and we are brought back to the true reality of his existence. Is that how you look at this movie?
I think that whether it happened or it didn't happen, the events in the film doesn't
it's
matter.
Hard. You cannot take this movie literally.
No. I don't think you can.
Yeah, completely.
No. I think that's what I'm saying. I think
and I'm not saying you're doing that.
No.
You're not doing that.
No, I think that whether they happened or they didn't, I'm not saying time's a flat circle here or anything, but it kind of feels like that. It kind of feels like your efforts here to explore, because we all have those temptations. Everybody has those temptations. You're in through it for a long time. You get frustrated with things. You get yelling. You think of in your head all the scenarios. So maybe you're thinking back on it, or you, in this case, maybe you act on some of it.
But this is so much different because they're not fighting. They're going to sex clubs and trying to cheat on his pregnant wife.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly.
Maybe, I guess what you're saying is it is the most extreme version of that, but
yeah,
that's the reality. I'm saying it is an indictment of men's abilities to do this and still maintain a sense of control and be entitled to continue to exploit.
See, I think that by the end,
women in their lives.
I think by the end is the sigh is not inevitability, but the idea of, I did all that and I maybe I got what I wanted, but still not enough. Never having the hole
that I can get behind.
Then the hole inside of him.
But also this nagging sense of his
The world
mother
revolves
looming
around
over him
me.
for his entire life.
There's two different women, yet the world that revolves around me being the only man in the scenario, right? And the exact
It is
same
very
replicant.
much about a man who thinks he is the main character.
Yep.
For
and
sure.
so yeah, and there's these two crumbling marriages, right? Or these two uneasy relationships, at least there. And so yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like, okay, you spice it up all you want, dude. You still got to face what you got, and you really don't have that much power, even though you think you do. You know what I mean? Like it's a little contradictory, but I think that the movie ultimately nails its idea of, yes, these are terrible human beings, Adam and Anthony. I don't think that there's like a pro, like there's one pro and more con. I think they make up one person, and that person is shitty, and that person is very much not settled with the idea of just letting that status quo just be there. Just let it be there. It always the idea of wanting more and more power and more and more.
So
and
it's
more
about
stuff like
not being able to accept the difficulties of marriage, maybe.
Yep. But you're being immature.
I like that.
And it goes back to, if you're immature, where the problems lie when you're immaturity.
But the reinforcement of that immaturity that the world provides to him, as well as his crutch of his relationship with his mother as an excuse to treat women poorly.
Bingo.
Is kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. Bingo. We got there.
And you know what?
We did it, Joe.
It's always so valuable to watch these films in quick succession like this, especially coming off the heels of Todd Haynes. I'm kind of in this feminist filmmaker mindset to this point, and I think in the future as well, to a certain extent. Villeneuve is a director very interested in, if not exclusively, the perspective of women, the ideas of how men treat women. Between Polytechnique, Encendies, and this film, I think those kind of, as far as when he started breaking through.
Well, I think in the next two films as well, I think that they're fascinating from the perspective of the. I mean, Arrival for sure, but
Arrival definitely.
Sicario. It makes or breaks people, and we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah,
but that is a fascinating.
It at least has ideas on that, or at least is striving for ideas on that.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah,
I had remembered. I'd actually forgotten about Sicario. But you're totally right. And that's interesting. And I don't think people think of him that way at all.
No, I think that people have a perception of Denis Villeneuve as a film dude, bro. Yeah, and therefore those female characters are lacking. It's like, honestly, it's what a lot of people kind of say about Tarantino. I think Tarantino's a much better writer of women than probably. Denis Villeneuve doesn't really write his characters, but
that's the thing. He's not literally writing the characters, but you look at Ana de Armas in Blade Runner, it's about how men are looking to literally create their ideal versions of women.
I think Robin Wright's character in Blade Runner, when we talk about that's an absolutely fascinating character. And talk about her dynamics.
He's got some interesting stuff to say on that front.
Yeah. I mean, Rebecca Ferguson in Dune.
Yeah.
Supposedly Zendaya and Florence Pugh, they'll have big roles in part 2 of Dune. So it's not like he doesn't.
It is, especially when you compare it to his most commonly referred to contemporary, which is Nolan, who is fairly criticized for.
He's got a dead wife problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that doesn't mean they're the less of a filmmaker, but yes, he,
and I'm not saying Villeneuve separates himself from Nolan.
Yeah. But it's not like it's, I mean, it is I wouldn't think of him as a female.
Most of the time it's not detrimental to Nolan, by the way. But
no, I don't think so either. Like even in Oppie, I've seen the movie 4 times.
It can be. It's a problem in Inception, I think.
Oh yeah. It's a problem in, I think,
it's maybe a problem in The Prestige. Slightly,
but not much. I don't think it's a problem in Interstellar, but you don't like Interstellar. I get that. I don't think it's a
Well,
problem.
it's definitely not a problem in Interstellar.
I don't think it's a problem in Tenet, but that goes by your mileage of Tenet. And
Well, that's just because Tenet has basically no women in it.
well, that's Elizabeth Debicki. I think
It
she's
has Elizabeth Debicki.
I think she's great in that movie.
She is
But
great.
but I yeah, then like Carrie Ann Moss and Hilary Swank in his earlier films.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Batman movies. That's
Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, like Maggie Gyllenhaal, Katie Holmes, whatever. I think Hathaway's actually good in Dark Knight Rises. People kind of forget about that. That was such a performance that was so hailed at the time it came out that people have not kind of come around and kind of forgot how good that was, I think.
It's kind of crazy how Bane has so sustained in pop culture, even though people just kind of universally don't really like that movie.
Yeah, it's because it's Tom Hardy and he rules. And he rules great at everything.
He's the best.
Tom Hardy should be Tom Hardy should have been Hugh Jackman in Prisoners.
That could have been good. He might have been a little too young at the time.
We were asking that question last episode if you were all listening to that.
Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out who would be a better choice than Hugh Jackman, and Hardy would have been good. He would have been good.
He would have been good at the time.
But he would have been
now.
He would have been good opposite Gyllenhaal, though. They would have had I think they would have had good sparring. He would have been good. He gives that menacing. He would have done a good accent. He would have. Like I think
Ruffalo. Do you think Ruffalo could have done the Jackman part, or does he not have that intensity?
Yeah. He's too. I also just think Mark Ruffalo's too.
He does have that intensity, though.
He's too. I think he's just too liberal for that. I see that. I was like, I don't think Mark Ruffalo could play a conservative. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
You got to think of a guy that can get in the dirt.
Bale could have done it.
Easily could have done it. I mean, for God's sakes, the man was freaking Dick Cheney, for Christ's sake. Not this. That's a good thing. I'm just saying. He transforms. He transforms into those characters. He's like.
Should I rewatch Vice?
No. You know what you should talk about? You should talk about this movie a little bit more.
Ryan, this is what we do.
I know.
Do not try to. I'm trying to. Don't try to break me. This stallion cannot be broken.
Did you compare yourself to a horse right there?
Yeah,
Are you Stallion, the spirit of Cimarron?
Yes. What is it? His name is Spirit, the Stallion of the Cimarron, correct?
Remember, it's that thing where you can take that title and you can do it all three ways, and
I believe he is voiced by Matt
Damon. Yeah,
but he's not voiced. It's just in his head.
It's narrated.
That was a wild movie.
That's a wild movie. I think Damon talked about it on the Oppenheimer trail, and I saw that and I was like, wow, you're really bringing up Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron or whatever the fuck that thing's actually called.
Let me tell you, it stinks that we don't have any like pressers right now. I hate it.
Well, maybe if the studios got to the table and fixed that.
Well, once again, we're time stamping this podcast. This is being released in the middle of the writers and actors strike.
So we don't know if maybe in 2 weeks when this thing
it might be over. I don't know.
It might be over. We don't know.
Iger wised up. Who knows?
What do you think of you talked about it a little bit earlier. What did you think about the way the movie looks? Because this is not Deakins.
No, it is not.
This is his last
who has done nothing else.
Yeah, this is his like last time working with somebody not Deakins, right?
Well, no, Arrival.
Oh yeah,
Dune.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, but mostly Deakins going forward. Deakins focused.
Yeah, I guess it's like half and half.
Yeah, but you think the movie looks good?
I think the movie looks great, and I think it's so purposeful in the way it looks, and it really contributes to that sense of dread. And again, similar to we spoke about Dark Waters recently, and I think that cinematography is such an asset to what that movie is trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this movie is not necessarily thematically tied, but it is that Villeneuve thing of just having a stranglehold on the tone. And that includes the film's aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it really just, it is such a downer of an aesthetic that it contributes to the downer vibe of the movie as a whole. This is not a fun movie. I will go ahead and say that. And we've spoken so far pretty exclusively about downer movies made by Villeneuve. That's going to change slightly when he gets a little more Hollywood. He gets a little more of a sense of humor, but to this point, it is pretty exclusively dread and dire circumstances and intense narratives. This a little less so because it does have that sci-fi bend to it, but it's still trying to grab you by the collar and shake you and make you feel a little scared at times. And it succeeds.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. I mean, I'm looking at his cinematographer, Nicholas Bolduc, and
They had done some
his
stuff before,
editor.
right?
No, I'm
Had they
looking at
not?
it.
I thought they'd done like some short films or something.
Maybe they did some
I don't
short
know.
films. I don't. I'm looking at his filmography. I'm not seeing him with Villeneuve anywhere. So it was kind of a one-off. Same thing with Matthew Hannum, which is the editor of this film too. So it feels like a lot of people that he maybe like knew from the French Canadian market and sort of worked with them one last time. Uh, I don't know. I know this movie. This movie was shot in Toronto in May of 2012. And Jay, do you know when Prisoners was shot? Do you know this was before or after?
No, I don't
They,
offhand.
so they start. So this was shot before Prisoners. So he's working with a bunch of. It feels like a bunch of guys that he may have known, he may have met through the French Canadian sort of film scene or whatnot. People that are more reliable that he could lean on, to make something small, right? He works with and makes this movie, and then principal photography began in Georgia in February 2013 for Prisoners, which is astonishing because then that movie debuts in August of 2013 for Telluride, which is insane that had that quick of a turnaround for a movie like that, a 2.5 hour movie. That's insane.
Yeah, this guy Nicholas Bolduc, he did do a short film in 2008 called Next Floor with Villeneuve.
Oh, okay. All right. But features wise, this is the only thing he's ever worked with him on. So
Yes,
these are kind of like pals, people that he's worked with.
he's got a Three Musketeers movie this year that he shot.
Who's in that?
Vincent Cassel is in it.
Oh,
Ava Green is in it.
what?
Vicky Creeps is in it.
What?
It looks like it's French.
Okay, sign me up.
It's called The Three Musketeers: D'Artagnan.
Oh, so it's like a what do you call it? It's like a prequel or a first film, right?
Yes, I think so.
Also, the Richard Ayoade film, it's that's a different The Double. This is based off a novel, The Double. That one's based off a novel, The Double, but that's the Dostoevsky book, and this is not that.
It's
Yeah,
a
so
different The Double, really?
yeah, they're two different doubles.
Interesting.
You know what they are? They're a double.
We love a double. That's Tim Duncan, man. It's your guy.
It's my double. Well, I was thinking more like for probably In and Out fans, but yeah, sure. We want to go the sports route. Tim Duncan, the master of double doubles.
Anytime I can bring up Tim Duncan for you, my friend, I will do so.
Did you see recently the Basketball Hall of Fame for Pop and Tony? Eric's gonna get mad that I'm talking about sports. It's gonna get really angry.
It's our podcast.
I cried like a baby when I saw Tony Parker and Coach Pop and Becky Hammon.
Can't decide if that's endearing or embarrassing.
I think it's endearing.
Both.
I think when you have figures in your life that gave you 20 years of joy, I think that
yeah,
I think it's okay to say that, right? Men should show their emotions more. Unlike Jake Gyllenhaal's characters in this movie, they should show their.
They're a little pent up, aren't they?
A little pent up, a little angry, a little frustrated. I love the scene. I love the scene of Gyllenhaal basically being like all of us when he got like a DVD or a tape and he's rewinding it back and forth muted, like he's like when he's trying to find the first, like when he's trying to find Anthony on there and see it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that it's like almost like JFK-esque. It's like the bullet thing,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Where
yeah.
it's
Like
like,
watching the Zapruder film.
yeah, exactly. It's like
Yeah.
going back and forth. Every film person's ever done that. We're like, wait, is that person? Is that person who was in there? And that's why I think this movie is so interesting too. Like I was talking about all those influences because it feels like it also feels really interesting of the fact that like this is his most. It feels like inspired or film inspired sort of send up. These sort of chasey claustrophobic thrillers. It feels very him. I'm just saying, like Villeneuve, I didn't really feel as much of him in Prisoners as much as I do in this. And this is like the Villeneuve that I think we're getting to with these next couple of films. With these next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about a guy that feels a lot more like this than the Incendies and the Prisoners guy that we've talked about the last 2 weeks.
He really hasn't made that many movies.
He hasn't made that much, but I think like this is like him being like, I want to lean on my influences. I want to make my own thing. I want to say some stuff, but I also want to shoot some cool shit. Like, is that fair to say? Like he just wants to shoot some cool shit and work with Jake G in this movie.
Well, it does feel like a movie where he said, "All right, I made a huge one. Now I'm going to make a small one."
Well, he didn't know. Well, he made this one first, and then he made
Prisoners. Well, after Prisoners, though.
Yeah.
Or no, you're right. No.
Yeah, he made this one first.
He made this, then Prisoners. Okay, so I have it off. So this is really like his last hurrah. This
feels more inspired.
Sayonara to this kind of movie.
Yeah, I think that's why it's a little bit.
Because we talked about it in the Prisoners episode. You say the door is open for him to do this again. I don't think it is.
I think he could do it.
He could do it.
Yeah, I think he could.
He could, but he won't.
But you're asking if the door is open for him to do this. The door is open because I think he would. Practically, he could.
He could, but
practically, he might not have a choice. Because if you guys, like you were saying, if you think Dune fails, or doesn't meet his expectations, then he can't go back. He can't go forward if he keeps failing backwards. I mean, Blade Runner 2049. When we talk about the movie,
disaster.
There's going to be a lot. It is a box office disaster. The fact that then Warner Brothers said, you know what, we'll give you Dune. It almost feels like a dare to get him out of the damn studio system. And it did well for what it needed to do in the parameters of the circumstances that were of that time.
On that curve, it did what they wanted it to do, I guess.
It does on a map, but
it's impossible. It's impossible to truly judge.
Honestly, you really
until we see Dune 2.
I was gonna say, I think you guys were right about that. The more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, we're not gonna really know, but like, okay, movie makes double two and a half time multiplier on its budget.
I've been paying attention to how Warner has been operating. I don't think them choosing to do something is indicative of a good decision.
No.
Or indicative of a decision driven by
they're already trying to put
analytics.
They're already trying to put Barbie on VOD. It's like,
that was interesting. I saw that. So that'll be what, a month, 6 weeks.
No, it's gonna be September 5th, I think. So it'd be about it'd be about a month and a half.
Yeah,
it's kind of stupid.
Honestly, these days, that kind of makes sense to me.
I mean, they did make $1.5 billion. So
that's so crazy.
It's also crazy.
And then cinema has more momentum than it has had in years. And then the studios were just like, no.
See, that's why.
Let's throw the brakes on here.
See, that's why. And this is going to age it well. This is why.
God.
This is why I don't think Dune's moving, because you need a movie like that if everything gets settled in the fall. You need big movies right now.
But are they? I mean, they're probably handcuffing it to one extent or another if they're still on strike and they can't promote the movie. Do you think the strike gets settled before Dune comes out, whether that's this year or whenever it comes out? Or do you think it will come out in the middle of a strike?
So are you saying, like, if like they delay it to May, like they've been saying, do you think the strike will still be going on? Is that what you're trying to ask?
Well, no, the question is that there's two options, right?
Yeah. There's premiere it the way it is.
Release it now, and the strike. Well, I guess there's three options.
Yeah.
One, because the strike will get resolved by when did you say May? Is that when they're thinking about pushing it?
Yeah. It'll get done by
it'll
then.
It'll be resolved by then. But so
long
there's three options.
Done by then. Yeah.
One, they release Dune before the strike is over, and they release it when it was originally dated. Two,
like November.
They release it when it's dated and the strike is over. Or three, they release it next year after the strike is over.
I think that it will be released during a strike.
That's where I'm leaning to.
And I think that the strike will end next year. I think it's going to go crazy. I think it's going to go until January or February.
That's crazy.
That's me being optimistic.
Well, if I know corporate America, I know that it's not going to get resolved between Thanksgiving and the New Year.
Nope. So it needs to be done. It needs to be done now. Or it ain't. If we get to November and it's still going, the holiday season, they don't want to get it done. But they will then have 2.5-ish, 3 months to get it done. Because I do think it will be done by the time of the Oscars. There is no doubt in my mind they will have that done by the time of the Oscars.
Oh, so do you think they would do you think the writers and actors would boycott the Oscars?
Well, they can't promote their films. So how are they going to be able to accept awards? Can't talk about it. They can't go to
accepting an award for a film counts as promoting their movies.
Wouldn't
even
you
if
say?
They're not actively lobbying for the award.
Wouldn't you have to think
that would actually be interesting? It would be the most objective Oscars ever.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy.
It would be wild. For sure. Anyway, anything else on Enemy you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, there's honestly plenty to talk about. We haven't even talked about Mélanie Laurent, who I just think is such a great actress.
Why don't we get it? Why don't we get more from her? I feel like she's not in enough.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or maybe if she's doing more stuff overseas and we're just not seeing.
She was in that Aja Netflix sci-fi movie where she's in like a space pod. Do you see that one?
No.
What's his name? Alexander Aja? That's him, right?
Oh, was that Oxygen?
Yeah.
Okay. She's in Murder.
Not very good.
She's in Murder Mystery 2.
She is in Murder Mystery 2. Yes. Bad film.
Yeah, very bad film. Yeah, so she does, well, obviously she kind of breaks on the scene in 2009 with Inglourious Bastards.
So good in that movie. I remember seeing that movie in 2009. Obviously, I was like, masterpiece, incredible. And then I had a conversation with my father about Inglourious Bastards.
Oh, no.
And this man.
Oh, no.
We talk about Inglourious Bastards. He says it was really good, except for the parts with the girl. And I said,
what? Sir.
He was like, I just wanted more of the bastards.
That's a dad line right there.
It is a dad line. And
you're not, well, you're a dad now. You don't agree with that, do you?
No, that movie, okay. I mean, it is. Look, Ryan and I, just a little kind of behind the scenes. I've gotten Ryan really into this bad habit of buying these kind of artistic
oh shit
prints.
Yeah.
And we are both currently in a private commission for an Inglourious Bastards prints that is exclusively featuring Mélanie Laurent's character.
So Shoshana. Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
It's her in the red dress.
Wait for it to get
the night of the
while the theater is on fire.
Yeah, while the theater
looking out the window.
Yeah, it's fucking great.
Yeah, it's great. I can't wait. That one's going straight on the wall.
Oh yeah, that one's going right behind me here. I cannot wait. I got that one and then Little Women.
Yeah, I got that one as well.
You and I are in those commissions for that.
And then I also got a Heat one, so I've got double Heat now.
I'm trying to get. Oh yeah, I didn't get into that Heat one. I didn't get into
I don't know that I love that one. I don't think you really missed out on that one.
Yeah. No, I feel like I did miss out on there was one for Taxi Driver and Casino, and I feel like I should have got those.
Yeah, I don't really love those styles. See, now we're getting this is a tangent.
This is sweaty.
This is a bad tangent.
This is bad because then we're gonna get our listeners involved in spending
Yeah.
hundreds of dollars, and that's
Yeah.
not what we want them to do. But anyway, she did like Inglorious Bastards. She follows it up with Beginners. Did you ever see her in Beginners? She's
I've
great.
not seen Beginners.
You
Need
not
to
see
see
it?
it.
You've never seen Beginners?
No, I need to see it.
Great movie. She's in Enemy, this one. She's also in Now You See Me with Mark Ruffalo. She's actually pretty good in that. She's done like By the Sea, Galveston, Operation Finale. Do you remember that one?
She's in stuff.
She's in stuff. Six Underground, which is bad. She's a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know. It's how unbelievably common is it for somebody to have an incredible performance in a Tarantino movie and then never really live up to it again? It's a story as old as time.
Well, it's so uncommon that somebody came back and did the same performance and won another Oscar for it. Christoph Waltz. He won two Oscars for the same performance and has never delivered a performance even close to it ever since.
He's a weird one.
He is a weird one. Yeah. You think Jake could be good with Tarantino? Like Jake could be the film critic?
I think so. I don't know why he wouldn't.
I think honestly, Jake asked because it's about what, like a porn star, or it's like a porn film, like porn critic. God, I can't even.
Is that what it is? I knew it was.
Or it's like a film critic or something, like in the 70s or something like that.
The original rumor was that it was a Pauline Kael.
Yeah, and then he kind of scratched that. Yeah,
and yeah, that didn't sound like something that Tarantino would make.
I don't know. That kind of sounds
from
like
the beginning.
No,
an adult film critic sounds like something that Tarantino would make.
And it sounds like something unhinged enough I think Gyllenhaal could sink his teeth into.
Well, Gyllenhaal he's in that era now. We talked about it last week. He can
work with anybody.
His weirdo era.
Yeah, he's in his raise your eyebrow Republican era.
Is that what you would call this era?
Yeah,
I don't think that's the era he's in right now. I just think he's in his bombastic era.
The Guilty, The Covenant, and Roadhouse. That's like some
Ambulance.
Yeah, those are a little bit. You're like,
Ambulance is certainly not a right-wing movie.
No, but Michael Bay is definitely.
Well, it's interesting. He's an interesting one in that regard, as far as his politics are concerned.
But no, and then he's not. But it's just kind of like, what are you making here, buddy? Like it's like who's your agent now?
The Covenant's good.
I haven't seen it. You think he's going to be good in Roadhouse? I think he's woefully miscast.
Who's directing that?
I can look that up. Anyway,
was that the one that you said Lyman was making?
Yes, Lyman's making that. Doug Lyman.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with that.
I like Sarah Gadon in this movie, by the way.
I do too. I think
she's really good. I like that scene with her and Adam at the bench.
She's such a striking looking person.
She also has
beautiful.
She also feels like she has that intimidation that you would feel that the characters are going through. That sort of.
Yes, I agree. And her being pregnant, I think adds a whole extra layer to the entire movie.
And of course, the idea of like when Anthony, the first thing he wants to do is cheat on her, and why I find that to be because she's pregnant, because he's trying to think of the time before he has to commit to responsibilities, right? Mm-hmm. Where you could be a prick, or you could be this, the movie star, you could have that persona, but also you are just a dude that doesn't have to be accountable for anything, right? But when you have a kid and you're married, things change, right?
Right.
And I think she's fantastic in this.
She's really good. There's one particularly compelling moment because there are a lot of shots. This is a film that really has a lot of shots of just one person in the frame. Even when the two Gyllenhaals are in the same room together, often it's just because for practical purposes, it's expensive to have both of them on the screen at the same time. But that is the wow moment that this movie has going for it is, whoa, what if there were two Jake Gyllenhaals in the same frame? And that doesn't happen very often at all. It's largely one person in the frame, and there are kind of two contradicting shots that repeat themselves. They rhyme, I guess, is how you could say it.
Mm-hmm.
But
There
there's one scene where she's sitting on the couch distraught after having seen Adam, and she's had this huge revelation. And Anthony comes in and is like, "Where are my blueberries, babe? What are you doing? Like, what the heck, man?" Just completely not acknowledging that
mm-hmm.
she is clearly upset about something. And that
Mm-hmm.
is really where you feel the disconnect between these two characters. And also, it's made very clear that he has cheated on her in the past, and he's very insecure about, where he stands with her, and also this idea of, you can't control me. I'm my own man, and that is hurting her personally. And then the opposite of that is at one point in the film when we have this kind of dark switcheroo going on, and Adam is now staying with Helen. There's a shot of Helen topless, very pregnant, and it's not this like alluring shot. It's just to remind you that she is, very pregnant, and the idea of Anthony being able to do these things while she is like this is twisted. I mean, it really adds this extra layer of disdain that you have for Anthony in that moment. But what does Adam say when she comes through the door? He says, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And she is like jolted. She is shocked. And she also, at that point, that she knows that this is Adam and not Anthony. And that leads to kind of the final twists and turns of the movie. But you see it in her eyes and the way that her body, she's very slow to put her shirt on, and she's very contemplative in that moment. And that switch flipping for her in that moment is kind of where the movie turns itself on its head, and you see where this thing is going. And that's all because of her. She's really, really good.
I mean, it's the idea of that she sees the opportunity of getting a second chance with the partner that seems to be fading away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even if there is a lot, it's a very scary thing to have change, right? In any sort of relationship. That's why I think like this is a movie about relationships and change and compromise, but also there's a lot of toxicity that involves in it. And it's also not to say that, I mean, like Helen is getting rid of a version of a person that she fell in love with to settle for another version that she doesn't know if she loves this fully yet or not. But it's just something different, and she's trying something else. Because when you first meet them, he's like yelling at her, is very abusive, very angry.
Well, if you want to look at it on a subconscious level, and you do put these Adam and Anthony together in almost like this Fight Club way, it is Helen seeing this side of him that has been missing, and that she misses so much, because there is the confidence that Anthony has that is so appealing, and there is the self-doubt that Adam has that can be so off-putting. But there is also the sense of care that Adam has that Anthony completely lacks. And so they're half full independently, but when you kind of combine the two of them together, they create this whole person with a whole personality. And it's that idea of just trying to remember the side of him that has been missing. And so if you look at it, at the end of the day, I think this film is really about one man trying to find himself again. He is so broken up by the way that he has lived his life. And you can't just look at it as this true literal story. You cannot take this as it comes on the page.
No, but I think from her perspective,
fully subconscious level.
I think for him, you're absolutely right. But I think for her, she's making choices there, whether it's consciously what he's seeing her making a choice,
oh for sure,
or whether we as an audience are actually getting to see her actually make a choice.
yeah.
She's
I don't
making
think it's a coincidence that Helen and what's Melanie Laurent's character's name?
her
Mary.
Mary. Yeah,
It's not a coincidence that they look kind of similar, right?
yeah. It's no, yeah. But I think that, but also they act differently, and there is this sort of
Yeah.
there's yeah. I mean, like
Oh, they're definitely different personalities.
very much so. They're almost like when they switch, right? Those personalities for both of them collide, like Mary and Anthony, right? And then Adam and Helen are able to sort of simmer, right? And settle, as opposed to being these conflicting things that are compounding against one another, right? But even when by the end, when clearly Adam's in Anthony's role now, right? And they've sort of converged into that life with Helen. There's still all that uncertainty. And I find that to be interesting, because it's like, I feel like,
oh yeah, for sure.
And I'm glad that he does
comes in.
And I'm glad he doesn't continue the film, because he's leaving you as an audience to figure out, is this new plan going to work? Do you think?
Well, see, I would say I would say it's not uncertain. What it is certain that it's not going to work.
Yep, exactly. And I think that it's like, it's not going to work, because we've clearly seen that these people can't be trusted.
Because it is about this guy's subconscious, and this thing is always going to be in the back of his mind, driving him to do self-destructive things.
You know why it doesn't work? Because he sighs at the end. Sigh tells you everything.
You're totally right. You're right. That is a fantastic moment. And I will say this too. Gyllenhaal does a really good job of differentiating the two Gyllenhaals in this movie. And the other thing that does a really good job of that is the wardrobe.
The wardrobe's great.
Anthony looks so sharp, and Adam looks like a dork.
Well, isn't that like the thing about Gyllenhaal that's so great of him as an actor, is he really can transform into pretty much anything, because we've seen him in so many different versions throughout his career. And I think it's fascinating that he's able to then to do a performance like this, because there's not a lot of actors that I want to see two versions of them or can make that work. Dual performances.
What are the great multi? I mean, I immediately go to Nicolas Cage in adaptation.
I think of that. I mean, Bale's really great, even though you don't really get to see it because it's makeup, but I guess it's kind of the same performance, I guess, in Prestige. But, I mean, you're gonna laugh at me, but I mean, something like Mike Myers and Austin Powers is a pretty comedy is more. You're more used to that, I guess you could say.
I mean, he's great. He's great in those movies.
What
about your beloved Cloud Atlas?
I mean, yeah. I mean, like, who would you say? Like Wishaw? I mean, that whole cast, really, anybody.
Yeah, I mean,
Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving's like like even who's really great in like all the different roles is Hugh Grant, even though he's in some very questionable.
You think so?
Yeah, there's like what is it? The futuristic where he's in Asian Face.
You think there's some problems with that? Oh, the answer is Peter Sellers in Doctor Strangelove. But
yeah, there you go. Yeah, but this is. I mean, I wouldn't put this up there, but it's fascinating work from Gyllenhaal too, who has been known by some people, and I know Eric's probably going to scoff at this, but to have, it feels like a screen personality, and then behind the scenes to be known as a little bit more of a bad boy and stuff. So, it's interesting. It's an interesting movie, and it also feels kind of very vulnerable for Jake to do this with
Sam Rockwell.
And what?
Moon.
Oh, that's right. Moon. Jeez. I don't know why I didn't think of that. But yeah, no, he's great in this movie. This movie's very good. I like it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Anything else you want to mention real quick?
No Radiohead, which is a good call by him.
Honestly, though, I feel like it could have worked.
It actually feels like this is one where it probably could have worked.
Yeah. What Radiohead song would you have put in this movie?
Oh boy. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking of an end credits song that comes right after
The Spider.
the spider.
Mm.
And I would think I would want it to be sort of an intense, like my favorite needle drops are ones that are so antithetical to what immediately came before them in the actual movie.
Mm.
So I would want like a kind of big, harder Radiohead song.
Ooh. Trying to think. I'm proud of myself. That's a good question. Maybe They're There.
I'm going
From Hail to the Thief.
I'm going Idiotech.
Oh, you think so?
Why not?
Because why not?
Yeah, why not?
That's a good one. God, they got so many good songs. I'm gonna jump down that rabbit hole tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? The piano version of Westworld songs. That's what I want to put at the
How
end of
about
this.
exit music for a film? A little on the nose.
Little on the nose, but yeah, I don't blame it. I mean, it's okay to go on the nose. I think that you can.
I was just saying literally because it's called exit music for a film.
Well, yes, I understand that because you're leaving the fucking theater at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So no Radiohead. That's good. He doesn't use Radiohead anymore.
No, he does not.
There's no
what
more.
If he
Radiohead.
used it in Dune too.
Yeah, wasn't it like those what is like the guy that like is doing the chants?
Instead of bagpipes,
it's Tom York spazzing out on
this
on
is a
IMAX.
movie that definitely a Johnny Greenwood score would have fit this movie.
Oh yeah. Like this has the vibes of like You Were Never Really Here.
Something like that.
Where Greenwood's doing that. Or have like a little Suspiria.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking more of his stringy.
Yeah. Oh, you want it like more like
score.
Like more
more
Power of the Dog
mode.
Power of the Dog?
I was thinking more like There Will Be Blood or The Master or something.
Phantom Thread?
Not as elegant as that.
No. But yeah, maybe more Master. Right?
He's a good composer.
He's pretty good at his job, I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
I would say so. Okay. Well, Jay, it's that time of the show. Before we get out of here,
yes,
we're going to test your award season knowledge based on the film that we just reviewed, which was Enemy, in a segment we like to call It's an Honor to Get Nominated.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Ledbetter, how many Oscars do you think Enemy was nominated for?
I'm going to go with 0.
I think you're correct. And the survey says yes. Golden Globes?
0.
Critics' Choice?
0.
Independent Spirit Awards?
0.
Gotham Awards?
0.
Canadian Film Awards?
Oh boy, God, must have gotten something. Is this a real thing?
Canadian Screen Awards.
You have it in front of you?
I do have it in front of me.
It must have gotten nominated for something. 3.
Is that your final answer?
Yes.
It was nominated for 10.
Ooh, this was sweeping the Canadian Screen Awards.
It was the second goddamn year of this award show. And it won how many? Just throw a number.
7.
Won 5.
It
won Best Director for Villeneuve.
Wow.
And it won Best Supporting Actress for Sarah Gadon.
Oh, that's a cool win.
That is a very cool win.
Mm-hmm.
It lost to a movie called Gabriel. It was up against a movie called The Dismantling, Empire of Dirt, which doesn't have anybody of reference there. The F Word, which was also known in many countries as What If, which starred Daniel Radcliffe and Zoe Kazan, has the great moment from Adam Driver where he has the line, "I just had sex and now I'm about to eat nachos." It's the greatest day of my life. Have you ever seen that clip, Jay?
I thought that was from Girls.
Nope. That's from a movie called The F Word,
Wow.
also known as What If. A movie called The Great Seduction. That's with Taylor Kitsch and Brendan Gleeson. And Mina, which is a movie. And then Tom at the Farm, which is the Xavier Dolan film. Or Xavier Dolan.
I'm going to tell you
Xavier
something, Ryan.
Dolan. Yeah.
I absorbed none of that.
Well, you should have. Enemy was the most nominated film at that award show, as well as the television series Orphan Black.
Mm.
You know what also was tied with Enemy, Jay, for the most awards at the second Canadian Screen Awards?
You know what, Ryan? I do not.
Well, Jay, it's one of your favorite films of all time. It is The Mortal Instruments, City of Bones.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. One of those that Jay drops the remote and watches at every point he can. A lot of tech awards.
Which one is that? That's not the one where the city is on wheels, is it?
That is the one. No, that's Mortal Engines, I believe.
Yes, Mortal Engines.
This is Mortal
Instruments.
Instruments. You get your shit right, Jay. All right.
I'm sorry.
City of Bones. They're not made on
sorry.
machines. It's the one with Lily Collins and Kevin Ziegler and Lena Headey and Adrian Turner, CCH Pounder.
I very vaguely remember.
Jared Harris, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, your boy.
Pass.
Yeah, this movie was basically a YA novel and was in the sequel was supposed to have Sigourney Weaver come on, but the movie was a big old bomb. So there you go. That's
Harold Zwart.
Yeah.
Director.
Exactly.
Director of Agent Cody Banks.
Classic. Actually,
Pink Panther 2.
Oh. Really just knocking out bangers here.
One of our masters.
One of the guys we think of anytime we're thinking about coming up with somebody new to do on the show. We think of this guy. Anyway, that's really the only awards that actually Enemy got nominated for. You wouldn't nominate this for anything, would you?
I would absolutely nominate this for stuff.
Really? Okay.
This is firmly in my top 10 of the year.
Okay. So
you would that means I would put it in Best Picture.
Wow. I liked it that much, huh?
Yeah.
So this would go in the 2014. No, it also go in the 2015 Oscars, which is the films that celebrate 2014. So
I was looking at 2013. Gosh darn it. So
this would be the year of like Birdman, American Sniper, Boyhood, The Grand Budapest Hotel,
this Imitation Game for 2014.
No, because it came out in America in 2014. It premiered at TIFF in 2013. See how premieres work?
I'm still giving it a nom.
Would you kick out what, like American Sniper?
Hold on, let me say him again.
Birdman, American Sniper, Boyhood, Imitation Game, Grand Budapest Hotel, Selma, Theory of Everything, Whiplash.
I'll get rid of Imitation Game.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it in the Best Picture lineup, but I would kick off Theory of Everything. I do not like that movie. And
pretty interesting year.
And Imitation Game. I don't like that movie either.
Was that the Ex Machina year?
No, that's the next year.
No.
I
got my dates all screwed up here.
You're getting all messed up. Now you're talking all these awards all the time now.
I mean, give me Best Supporting Actresses, because now you've really got me on.
Best Supporting Actress was Patricia Arquette, Boyhood. Laura Dern, Wild. Keira Knightley, The Imitation Game. Emma Stone, Birdman. And Meryl Streep for Into the Woods.
No, I'm getting rid of Meryl. Sorry, you're out of here.
I actually like Meryl and Into the Woods. I kick out Keira Knightley.
I think she's good in that movie.
I think that movie is blah.
The movie's whatever. She's good in it.
The movie wishes it was Oppenheimer.
Wishes it was. Most movies should wish they're Oppenheimer.
Damn right. That movie's just stale bread.
Yeah, I mean it's super dry. You're totally right about that.
Remember when the Imitation Game won Best Adapted Screenplay over Paul Thomas Anderson for Inherent Vice?
Look,
thank you.
I would not expect Inherent Vice of all Paul Thomas Anderson screenplays to win Best Screenplay. I will say that. I love that movie to death. That movie is almost purposefully incomprehensible and therefore is maybe not the best choice for a screenplay.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, Inherent Vice is a far superior film. But
yeah.
And it's a better screenplay than that.
Way better. That category.
Paul Thomas Anderson still not have an Oscar?
Nope.
That's hilarious.
The other nominees were American Sniper, Theory of Everything, and Whiplash. Inherent Vice is clearly the best screenplay out of that bunch.
I would give Enemy a nom.
I don't know about
over some of those. You're not kicking out Imitation Game? I wouldn't think of, well, I mean, I like Enemy, but it's not in my top 10. But it's better than Imitation Game.
I mean, yes, if we're going to do that, then yeah, I would kick out all the lineup.
It's probably not,
except
if
Inherent
you
Vice.
wipe out all of them and you get to put your 5, it's probably not there, but it's better than some of the stuff that was nominated.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. I would kick out Bradley Cooper and I would put in Jake Gyllenhaal.
I think Bradley Cooper's pretty good in that movie.
I think that movie sucks. Talk about propaganda.
That movie.
I kick out Eddie Redmayne too.
Well,
then, but obviously, I give it to the Keats. The fact that Keaton didn't win that Oscar just
that was tough.
Fucking makes me angry. It always makes me angry when you see when he put the speech back in his pocket.
His little note. Yep.
Yeah, he was going to have a good speech. You know it.
Yeah.
Dude rules. Michael Keaton just rules.
You seen The Flash?
No. It looks like shit.
Woof.
Never gonna watch that. You watched it. Goodness. You spent $20 damn on it, didn't you?
Look,
you're the problem. See, you're the problem. You're the problem. You're pinning $20 on a movie like that when you should have just waited for $5.99.
I'm the problem.
You're the problem. You're helping Zasloff out.
I'm sorry.
This is. I don't know. We're gonna have to talk about this.
I'm a big Zasloff guy. Actually,
I bet you are. This is a good podcast.
I think what he's doing is cool.
I think you're high off your ass if you believe that. All right. Jay, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work on the internet?
Yeah, you can find the occasional writing of mine over at awardswatch.com. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. J Ledbetter. You can find me on Letterboxd, just J Ledbetter over on Letterboxd. And those are my things that I'm doing.
Go like his stuff on Letterboxd so he's not sad about it.
Very insecure about it. That my
your Letterboxd stuffs are good. I love reading your reviews on there.
My Counselor review is such a banger. It should have 600,000 likes.
I don't know if that's possible. But
it should have 600,000 likes. I'm sorry. I don't even know if there's 600,000 users on Letterboxd, but it should have that many likes.
I feel like there are. Right?
It's a good question.
Yeah,
there probably are.
There probably
There's some
are.
movies on there that have like 300,000.
That app's a big deal now.
It's a big deal for a small audience, but yes,
it's good.
Relative to other stuff. It's the best app in the game.
I don't know about that.
Flappy Bird.
Yeah, pretty much. All right.
It's Letterboxd and Flappy Bird. Those are the two. Yeah,
that's true. All right. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd at McQuade77. You can find my work here at AwardsWatch.com, various other places as well. Just go on the socials and you'll find them there. You can also listen to our Awards Watch podcast that we do every single week. If you like all of our podcasts, you can go to iTunes or Spotify, give us 5 stars, 5-star reviews. We love hearing them. We love seeing them. And next week, before next week's stuff, go and sign up for the newsletter. The newsletter is it gets all the award stuff, all the AwardsWatch stuff, especially because we're coming up on festival season. We're in the middle of festival season when this episode drops, so you're going to want to hear and read all the reviews and podcasts and everything that we're going to be
doing. Put my
Letterboxd
reviews on the newsletter.
That
could probably help.
Yeah, talk to Eric about that. I'm sure.
Right,
it'll help you get your 600,000 clicks. Yeah. Next week, we will be back, Jay and I, talking about Sicario. We're getting into big Villeneuve film territory.
Yeah.
Next week. So until then, we'll see you all next time.